Welcome to Newsday on the BBC. I'm Sharonjit Lail in Singapore. The headlines. A lava flow from the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii reaches the coast, prompting warnings of a toxic gas cloud.
Lava spurting into the air, and you can hear it even from this distance. And people who live nearby say at times their homes have been shaken by the sheer force of the eruptions.
Back from the brink of a costly trade war, the US and China agree not to impose new tariffs on each other's goods.
I'm Babita Sharma in London, also in the programme. The polls have closed in Venezuela's presidential election, where the opposition accuses the government of intimidating voters. And the royal family thanked the public for their support after thousands lined the streets of Windsor to see the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Live from our studios in Singapore and London. This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Good morning. It's 8 a.m. here in Singapore, 1 a.m. in London and 2 p.m. in Hawaii, where the erupting Mount Kilauea volcano is posing a new threat to local residents. Lava is seeping into the ocean, releasing toxic gases, including hydrochloric acid steam known as LAYS. More people are being urged to leave their homes on Hawaii's Big Island. One man has been seriously injured. And as our correspondent Chris Buckler reports from the island, dozens of buildings have already been destroyed.
The lines of fire that scar this island are growing longer and thicker. And fountains of lava are bleeding through the cracks. The Kilauea volcano is slowly eating through the ground it once created.
3,000 feet above the ground, but you can actually feel the heat of the lava and you can smell the smoke.
As the lava has risen up, people have been warned to leave if they live in its path. At this shelter, they're offering food, clothes and help for those who have had to evacuate their homes. But there are families who already have nothing to return to.
The house burned down Saturday.
So you've lost your house?
Oh, everything, because we got nothing out. So everything. I have three t-shirts and 3 shorts. So everything we've got right now we've been buying or it's been donated.
How do you feel at this point?
Just scared, frustrated, worried. I've got 2 kids I got to worry about. Where are we going to go from here? Where are we going to rebuild from here? We lost everything.
Upset is all too easy to see in this corner of Hawaii, where roadblocks are keeping people from returning to their homes, often for their own safety.
We actually had 4 residents who were inside the evacuation zone, but they got cut off by a lava flow. They were not able to drive out, and so they actually had to be airlifted out one at a time by the county fire department.
And all the time, the Kilauea volcano continues to threaten. For days, this has been the spectacular sight on the skyline. Lava spurting into the air, and you can hear it even from this distance. And people who live nearby say at times their homes have been shaken by the sheer force of the eruptions.
We do have to be ready to go with our bags packed and our masks nearby. And if the air quality gets bad or the lava gets closer, we'll go.
All the indications are that the eruptions of lava are getting stronger and more violent. Kilauea has left parts of this island, so often promoted as a paradise, looking more like hell. Chris Buckler, BBC News, on the Big Island of Hawaii.
And we'll have more from Chris in Hawaii in a few moments. Stay with us for that. Our other top story this hour, Donald Trump says he is demanding an inquiry into whether his 2016 election campaign was infiltrated for political purposes. He wrote this tweet in which he said the president wanted to know whether the Obama administration had ordered such a move. Well, it comes after a New York Times report suggested the FBI had an informant within the campaign. Well, let's stay with Donald Trump, and the US president has spoken to his South Korean counterpart, Moon Jae-in, to discuss North Korea's recent threats to cancel a planned summit on the 12th of June. It comes on the eve of President Moon's visit to Washington. Last week, Pyongyang said it might pull out of the talks if the US continued to push for the North to unilaterally abandon its nuclear weapons. Malaysia's former Prime Minister Najib Razak has asked for police protection, saying he fears for his life. It comes just a day after the ex-leader complained about police searching his properties for evidence of corruption. This is related to the 1MDB scandal. Mr. Najib was deposed from power and replaced by his former mentor, Mahathir Mohamad. Pope Francis has announced that he will create 14 new cardinals for a number of countries, including Iraq, Pakistan and Japan. Making the surprise announcement during his weekly address at the Vatican on Sunday, the Pope said that the diversity of the new cardinals reflected the universality of the Catholic Church. Iran's foreign minister has said that the European Union is not doing enough to maintain the international nuclear deal since America withdrew from it last week. Speaking after a meeting with the EU Energy Commissioner in Tehran, Mohammad Javad Zarif said that there were now higher expectations on the EU in order to preserve the benefits for Iran in the agreement. Now, India's Railway Board has proposed to serve nothing but vegetarian food to its passengers across its network for just one day a year on Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. It's as a mark of respect to the pro-independence leader who was himself a vegetarian. Some are saying the railway's ban on meat should be more extensive, but critics say they're worried about the impact on freedom of choice. Now, a wall of sand has engulfed an entire county in northwestern China. Look at these incredible pictures. The sandstorm began on Sunday evening, extending from north to south, and covered the area in Gansu province in the space of just 10 minutes. Visibility was reduced to less than 10 meters. Adjacent areas in some other counties and cities in the province may also experience sandstorms in the next few hours.
Now, the U.S. Treasury Secretary has said a trade war with China has been put on hold. Stephen Mnuchin said the Trump administration would suspend the introduction of the new import tariffs to give time to work on a wider trade agreement. Beijing will also put tariffs on hold. And earlier, the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He described the idea as a win-win choice. Here's our business correspondent, Joe Lynham.
Last week, a delegation of senior Chinese representatives visited the U.S. to find a way of preventing a looming trade war between the world's two largest economies. President Trump had announced in March that he would impose tariffs of 25% on all steel imports into the U.S. China responded by publishing a list of U.S. products that would face retaliatory sanctions, but none have been put into force yet. Now Beijing said it would buy more U.S.-made oil and gas products and agricultural commodities, but did not give any details. That appears to have done enough to persuade the U.S. to suspend the proposed tariffs on Chinese goods, which had been set to come into force on Monday.
The strongest demand from both the Chinese side and the U.S. side is to stop the trade war and stop imposing more tariffs on each other's products. This time, both sides pledged to stop the trade war and develop good relations, be it in trade or in investment. I think this is a major demand from both countries.
I'm pleased to report that we've made very meaningful progress, and we agreed on a framework, which is important to understand. And the framework includes their agreement to substantially reduce the trade deficit by increasing their purchases of goods. We also discussed very important structural issues that they're going to make in their economy to make sure that we have a fair ability to compete there, and also protections about technology, which have been very important to the president.
Mr. Trump has long been critical of America's $335 billion trade deficit with China. On the campaign trail 2 years ago, he accused China of raping the U.S. through its trade policies and stealing American intellectual property. Although it flatly rejects such accusations, China is keen to avoid a trade war, which the World Trade Organization said would have a severe impact on the global economy. Joe Lynham, BBC News.
Let's get more now on our top story in the situation in Hawaii with that volcano. Our correspondent Chris Buckley is travelling with a National Guard convoy which is monitoring the flow of the lava.
I've just returned with the National Guard from actually being at the volcano, which is why I'm standing holding a gas mask. But down there close to the ocean where the lava has now reached, there is a wall of lava. That's the only way to describe it. This big black mound that really just covers the road, and it remains extremely fiery hot. People will have seen those pictures of the lava gathering and this slow-moving stream. Well, it's made its way across the land and it has now reached the water, and that has led to a huge plume of steam which you can see for miles around. We're about, I would say, about 4 or 5 miles from some of the fissures where I'm standing now. Those are the cracks in the ground, the volcanic vents where those fountains of lava have been springing up. And even at this distance, in the last couple of minutes, we have heard the sound of that magma and gases being released. And there is real concern about the gases and about people who live in those areas.
I just wanted to ask you specifically about this news that you've just mentioned, the toxic gas cloud featuring hydrochloric acid. How dangerous is that? I mean, you're not wearing your gas mask, the people behind you aren't. I'm just wondering how close it is to where you are.
I have to say, we are some 8 or 9 miles maybe away from there. We had to travel a long distance in with the National Guard. There is concern about VOG though, as it's what it's called. Essentially the air quality is extremely bad, but it depends very much on the wind. When we were down at that mound of lava and the steam was coming off it, carrying some of those gases that are concerned and some of those particles that can damage people's health, it was moving out to sea. I have to say though, with the National Guard, they made very clear that they were concerned about the wind changing direction at any time. That's why they made us stand there with gas masks, and they were watching the entire time, just monitoring the air quality. That's why they want to get people out. And of course the concern is if that wind was to change and it was to move those toxic gases, or indeed that VOG in this direction, that could change things. And that's why people in homes who live in the evacuation area, who haven't left yet, have been told it is time to go.
Some extraordinary pictures there, and that was Chris Buckley there from Big Island in Hawaii. Now, polls have closed in Venezuela after a controversial presidential election boycotted by most opposition politicians. Europe and the US have dismissed the election as a sham. President Nicolás Maduro is almost certain to be re-elected, despite the oil-rich country being in deep crisis, with people going hungry and thousands fleeing every day. Well, our South America correspondent Katie Watson reports from Caracas.
The likely winner cast his vote and cast aspersions on his biggest critics.
Por parte del gobierno de Donald Trump,
there was ferocious pressure from the government of Donald Trump to stop the elections in Venezuela, and they couldn't do it. We hope that the people express themselves and that the will of the people is respected here, throughout the world and in Venezuela.
Campaigning's banned on election day, not that the government respects all the rules of democracy. Several hours after polls had opened, down came posters of Hugo Chavez telling people to vote. He's the man credited with starting the socialist revolution that Mr. Maduro insists on continuing.
This part of town is traditionally very pro-government. It's where Hugo Chavez used to vote, with thousands of people coming to support him. The queues would be all the way down the street. This year, though, feels very different.
We were in this same polling station last year, and it was packed. Mr. Chavez looked on. You wonder what he'd make of the country Venezuela's become. Some people, though, still have hope.
Mr. Maduro has guaranteed social protection for us. I am voting in defence of my country. Neither Spain nor the United States have anything to do with our internal affairs.
He's going to fix the problems with the grace of God and Chavez's spirit. He's the son of Chavez. That's why we love him.
Down the road, the queues to buy chicken were longer than those at the voting centre. People's time better spent looking for food.
What we're voting for is a farce. I don't agree with these elections. Nothing will change. All that will happen is that life will get harder for Venezuelans.
It's getting worse. Venezuela is going backwards, not forwards. It's dreadful. We have no chance of anything getting better.
Across town, in the opposition-led areas, people turn to God for answers, not politicians.
Venezuelans are in a situation where they have been kidnapped. Candidates are not able to run. People are not able to choose. You cannot even protest on the streets because you're going to be in prison. And that's the struggle we're in, trying to get ourselves free from that kidnap situation.
It's a struggle that divides. While most of the opposition stayed home today, others felt they needed to do something.
I don't know how to use a gun, but my weapon is to go and vote. It's my way of defending democracy.
But with the government accused of dirty tricks, few people have faith in that democracy. Mr. Maduro's set for another victory, so change is unlikely to come soon. Katie Watson, BBC News in Caracas.
You're watching Newsday live from Singapore and London. Still to come on the programme. The secrets surrounding that dress. The designer behind Meghan Markle's wedding gown says even her own family didn't know she had created it.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Sharonjit Lail in Singapore.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Babita Sharma here in London. Our top story. A lava flow from the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island reaches the coast, prompting warnings of a toxic gas cloud containing hydrochloric acid. And the United States and China have agreed not to impose new tariffs on each other's goods, easing fears of a costly trade war. Let's take a look now at some of the front pages from around the world. We can start with the Japan Times, which looks at the U.S. alternative to the Iran nuclear deal. The paper says Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will unveil a new diplomatic roadmap on Monday. And next, we've also got the front page of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. And there, we've got President Rodrigo Duterte insisting that the Philippines does not have the military muscle to assert its sovereignty in the South China Sea. It shows in particular a picture of a Taiwanese fighter jet flying next to a Chinese bomber in the Luzon Strait just earlier this month, in fact. And finally, we turn to the international edition of the New York Times, which takes a look inside one of the largest centers moderating Facebook content, which is focusing on the work of employees at the Berlin Center trying to keep up with Germany's new law on hate speech. So that brings you up to date with some of those papers. Now, Raja Ampat is an archipelago of 1,500 odd islands scattered over 40,000 square kilometers off the Indonesian coast of West Papua. Now, these waters are home to more marine species than anywhere else on the planet, and there are single reefs in Raja Ampat that contain more species than the entire Caribbean. As word of its unspoilt beauty gets out, the visitors swoop in. Locals and scientists are striving to protect their slice of paradise. Well, earlier I spoke with Mark Erdman from Conservation International. He's one of the scientists who helped to establish the whole archipelago as a shark and ray sanctuary. His mission is to seek out new species there.
Really, I'd say there's two main reasons for that. Predominantly, it's because of the just mind-blowing diversity of habitats that you have in Raja Ampat. So you have atolls, deep mangrove-lined bays, current-swept patch reefs, and each of those have their own suite of species, so that adds up to quite a few overall.
Right.
Additionally, Raja Ampat geographically sits at the crossroads of Western Pacific and Indian Oceans, and so you just get this real melting pot of different species there.
You say, in fact, that every time you go there, you seem to discover new species. Tell us about some of the creatures you saw, if you've got any favorites.
Sure. The last trip that I just did was in February, March with Rascal Voyages, and we were, again, looking for new species as well as manta rays. And along that trip, we actually found 2 new species of goby. But I'd say over the last 15 years, we have nearly 90 new species of fish that we've come to find there, ranging from walking sharks to flashing wrasses and clingfishes and dwarf gobies, just a full suite of really beautiful and spectacularly colored animals.
Now, most people would know the goby fish in Asia because because it's quite popular in Chinese restaurants. So how is this one you've discovered different? And along with that, how do you start to protect this entire environment from potential fishermen or tourists who are now obviously flocking there?
This particular goby that I think we're looking at is called the Silhouettea goby, and it's just a very different head shape to it, as well as the coloration. In terms of the work that we're doing to preserve the reefs of Rajampat, though, we've been working with the local communities and government since about 2001 to put into place a network of 8 different marine parks around Rajampat. So the vast majority of the area is now protected from fishing, especially commercial outside fishing. But right now, what we are facing, of course, is a tourism influx, and so we're really working hard now to spread that tourism pressure around Rajampat.
Now, you mentioned as well that it's rife with coral reefs. Obviously, a lot of the fish feed off them. So what's being done to protect them? Because elsewhere, for instance, in the Great Barrier Reef, we're hearing a lot about coral bleaching.
Certainly. I think we're just lucky in the sense that Rajampat's reefs are quite resilient to coral bleaching. It does occasionally happen there. However, the reefs are able to recover quite quickly. And part of that is because we have very good water quality, and we've been working very hard to maintain that in the sense of preventing mining from happening on these islands, no major agricultural inputs, anything like that. And again, the communities have committed to protecting these reefs.
That was Mark Goldman there speaking to me earlier. Now, Babita, I know what you did over the weekend because you were there on that glorious day when Prince Harry married Meghan Markle.
I was indeed, and it was great to be there and be part of all the many things that were happening on the Long Walk, which is where I was, amongst tens of thousands of people. And the gasps came when we saw, of course, the first glimpse of Meghan Markle's even wedding dress. Everybody talking about who designed it, of course, and it was Claire Waite-Geller from the House of Givenchy, and she's been revealing that the two of them have worked very closely on the design. This is what she told us.
It was the big reveal, the first sight of the wedding dress. And behind the bride, straightening the 5 meters of veil, is Claire Waite-Geller, the British designer of the dress. She had kept fashion's big secret. Givenchy was not widely rumoured to be the fashion house to win this coveted project. The aim was always to design a dress that was simple, sharp and timeless.
I think with Meghan, she's so modern and fresh, and I think that was part of what she wanted to be. It really wanted to represent her. I wanted her to feel absolutely incredible in the dress, and also I wanted her to feel like it was absolutely right for the occasion too.
For 5 months, the dress was made in Paris by a small team of people, many of whom didn't even know who the gown was for. All of those who worked with the bride yesterday described her as relaxed and unfazed by the scale of the event ahead of her.
It was a beautiful moment. She's just so easy on that level, you know what I mean? It's just that kind of very loose kind of style, and easy and not contrived, so.
The wedding is likely to be one of the most watched TV events of the year. A peak audience of 13 million watched the BBC coverage. It's thought more than 1 billion watched globally. After sharing so much of their wedding day, the evening reception was a private affair. The couple drove through the grounds of Windsor Great Park for the black tie party nearby. The bride wore a new piece of jewellery, an emerald-cut aquamarine ring, a gift from her husband. It had come from the jewellery collection of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. The fireworks over the castle last night, one of the few clues as to what was happening inside. Further hints came via social media. Tennis player Serena Williams posting this video of herself en route to the party. The Duchess of Sussex now has her own page on the royal family website. She describes herself as a feminist. The new Duke and Duchess of Sussex will carry out their first public engagement as a married couple on Tuesday. They'll attend a garden party here at Buckingham Palace to celebrate the work of charities supported by the Prince of Wales. This afternoon, the bridal bouquet was laid on the grave of the unknown warrior in Westminster Abbey, a tradition dating back almost 100 years. After what was the most modern of royal weddings. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
What a glorious day that was indeed. Well, you've been watching Newsday. Stay with us because we're going to ask you if you'd be willing to pay $1 million for a rare bottle of whiskey. Well, these two smashed records when they went under the hammer in Hong Kong.
And I'm Babita Sharma. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Good morning.